real abbreviated version of the presentation that I give. I go to schools, I talk to parents, to staff, to school nurses, really any adult who works with or has kids who wants this information, I can present to them. So I'll just start by asking, do you all know what vaping is and have you seen vapes? Yes. Yeah, okay, good. So as I go through this information, I am gonna pass around some products. If it's in a bag, just keep it in a bag because that means it's leaking. And if it's not in a bag, then it's not leaking, you should be good. So I'll start off with just what is an e-cigarette basically. They come in many different forms, but this is a really basic e-cigarette. The way that they all work is that there is a battery, an atomizer, an area for flavored liquid nicotine, and then a mouthpiece. So the battery, the atomizer, the flavored liquid nicotine would go right here, and then the user would inhale with the mouthpiece. This one is refillable. So there are two ways to get that liquid nicotine basically. You refill it yourself, you put in whatever flavor you would like, or you use a pre-filled flavor pod. So this one just unscrews and you put the flavored liquid nicotine right in there. So I'll pass that around. And then beyond that, there are two types of battery power basically. There's rechargeable battery devices and there are disposable devices. So once the battery is used up and once the preloaded nicotine is done, then you would just throw it away. And a really, like the most common rechargeable e-cigarette out there right now is Juul. That's what schools are really facing right now is the Juul use in school, in classrooms, in the bathrooms. Every school that I go to, I basically get new products because the schools confiscate it and they'll give it to me. I did a whole presentation recently at Bristol Plymouth Tech with only their products that they had because they had so many that had been confiscated and they were mostly Juuls. So I'm gonna pass these around. This top part is the flavored liquid nicotine. So it just comes right off. You can see the nicotine in there. And once it's done, they throw the pod away. And this is the charger. It's magnetic. And then this is just a silver one, so you can see it.
So they keep that charger, that's the part they keep. Or they keep the whole device?
They keep the whole device
Okay.
except for the cartridge. So I'll pass around the cartridges as well.
Okay.
These are the cartridges loose. So once these are empty, you just throw this away and replace it. And this is the box that they come in. And a box is about $12 to $15 and the device is around $40. There are really often sales, like pretty much any Cumberland Farms that you go into, you'll see Juul like $14 off or something like that. They are pretty cost friendly and a lot of times teenagers will pool their money and share a device and that's kind of what schools are running into is that kids are keeping them in the bathroom or in someone's locker and leaving the locker unlocked and kids will use them all throughout the day in school. Did you have a question?
Yeah, do you have any input on, I guess, secondhand vape? Like,
yeah, I'm gonna get to that.
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
I wasn't sure if you were gonna touch it.
Yes, I will. So I'm just gonna basically pass around a couple of more products and then we're gonna talk about what's actually in them. But just to give you an example of the pre-filled, non-rechargeable, these are those. These just look like a pen or makeup or something, really easily concealable again.
How much are those?
They can be a couple dollars. Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to mention about the Juul. One of those flavor pods has as much nicotine as an entire pack of cigarettes. And kids go through them in a day in as little time as an hour.
Is there a type of flavor you mean? You're talking about the little...
The pod, specifically the Juul pod, the nicotine concentration in one pod.
So one of those in the bag. Jim, hold the bag up, would you?
One of those.
One of those.
One of these,
One of
when you
those.
repeat it, contains.
As much nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. And kids are going through them in a day, typically, but they can go through them in as little as 1 hour.
Again, maybe a stupid
No.
question, but you see someone vaping and they're using one of those pods. Do they go through it all in like one session, or do they like stop
It
and
depends.
start?
So there's no way to know when you're vaping how much you're consuming until you're out of nicotine, basically, until you hit the end. So someone could go through an entire Juul pod in one go, not in one inhale, but if they just sat there
Right.
and kept puffing on it, they could. But that's not really what's happening. It's like they'll take some of it and then 20 minutes later take some more and use it up in a day. Does that make sense? So this right here is another vaping device. It's called a Sorin. This is one of the newer ones, and I'm just gonna pass it around so you can see. This one I got from Bristol Aggie High School, I think, some high school. This top part is where the nicotine is. This black part comes right off. Just don't take it out of the bag. Speaking, it was very full when I got it. And then
the TSA confiscated them.
what's that?
You like the TSA confiscated.
Oh, well, when I go to school, they're happy to give them
Yeah.
away. Especially when it's something new that I haven't seen before. It's good.
Wow.
This is a flavored liquid nicotine. And hopefully you recognize the packaging and have an idea of what it is gonna smell
It's
like.
like
Yeah.
soap bubbles, like bubbles that you.
No, Sour Patch Kids.
Oh,
It's
okay.
called Candy King, but you can smell it through the bag. It smells just like Sour Patch Kids. And this liquid is what you would put into that very first device that I passed around that you pre-fill the liquid into. This is an example of that liquid. So it doesn't come preloaded in a cartridge, you put it in yourself.
Are they childproof?
That one is, and anything produced now is, there is regulation of the caps, but when these products first came on the market, there was not, and there actually were like toddlers who died from drinking this nicotine liquid. Did you have a question back there too?
I just, maybe you're into, has the Surgeon General come out and said it?
Yeah, so the Surgeon,
I'm hearing it.
yeah, the Surgeon General has said that these products are harmful. What's that?
Well, that's it, well, just like cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's worse than cigarettes.
And has also said that the secondhand vapor is not harmless. And that's kind of a good segue into what is actually in vapes and e-cigarettes. First and foremost, these products do contain nicotine. The packaging and the marketing is not regulated so that the products themselves don't always say that there is nicotine, or if they do, there's not any unified regulation on how they label how much nicotine is in the products. The Department of Public Health did a study on pre-filled disposable e-cigarettes, which I passed around, so they're the real small ones that look like pens, and they tested 9 brands that were labeled and packaged saying contain no nicotine, and 9 of those 10 did contain nicotine, which speaks to no truth in advertising here. So first and foremost, there's the nicotine, and specifically nicotine on a young person's brain, meaning before 25, before the brain is fully developed, nicotine is really harmful. It primes the brain for future addiction. It permanently lowers impulse control. It can lead to mood disorders such as depression, and it can actually change the way that the brain is able to learn, so disrupting how pathways are formed in the brain. And that damage from a nicotine addiction before the brain is fully developed can be permanent and irreversible. So besides nicotine, there are also a number of chemicals that we know of, and most likely many that we don't know of yet because these products are so very new. What we do know is that there is diacetyl, which is a flavoring which is linked to popcorn lung, which is a lung disease which causes like scarring of the lungs, permanent damage. It got its name, excuse me, from a whole bunch of folks who are working in microwave popcorn factories, and this flavoring diacetyl, when heated and inhaled, was causing this disease in all these workers. So that's in here, being heated and inhaled. Yes?
I'm just curious, remember when clove cigarettes were really big and the oils were giving them blisters in the lungs? Is it similar to that?
Right, yes, because it's an oil. The diacetyl is a flavoring, but there are oils in here too. So
it's not only scarring, but it's also blistering, and then scarring, or?
I'm not sure if they're specifically blistering, but that is something that I could look into to get you a specific answer. But there are oils in here as well. So there's glycerin, there's propylene glycol, which are oils. And FDA approved in foods, right? But your lungs don't have that same capacity to process and deal with oils being heated and inhaled into the lungs that your digestive system does have that capacity to do. There are also the heavy metals from the batteries on these devices. So all of these devices do have batteries, which are being heated up and heating this liquid. So the nickel, the lead, and the tin from these batteries are also being inhaled into your lungs. So you're getting those heavy metals.
As part of the vapor?
As part of that vapor that's inhaled and then exhaled. So the secondhand vapor is containing all of this, these ultrafine particles, these dangerous chemicals. So it's not just a matter of the person who is using the vape or the e-cigarette. It's also that person next to them who's getting these effects. And I should have actually said this earlier. It's not a vapor at all. It's an aerosol. When this flavored liquid nicotine is heated, the oils and all the other chemicals are turned into an aerosol. So think like hairspray, or you know what an aerosol is. So that the secondhand vapor is a question that we get a lot, because we all know that secondhand smoke from cigarettes is bad, but because of the calling of the word vapor really leads people, especially young people, to believe that this is harmless when really it is not. I just want to pass around these two, just so you can see them, just some more flavored products, just so I don't forget. And I want to point out that one of these says that it doesn't contain, the Swedish fish one says right on there it doesn't contain nicotine. It actually does contain nicotine. Yeah.
So do you think that the Department of Public Health, that because they're trying to redefine it as not a vapor, as aerosol, that some of their advertisements about it could show, like, would you spray hairspray in your mouth? You know, how hairspray is, do you think that they are going to come out with some, like they did with the tobacco control? Yeah, because I feel like they're really behind the 8 ball with getting out there the message and visuals about, I have friends that are doctors that are like, oh, I think it's okay because there's nothing in there, it's just, and so it's just vapor, it's, oh, it's just flavoring. Like, there's such a misinformation about it, and it's like a campaign needs to happen that they did with the tobacco.
Yeah. So the Department of Public Health launched an information campaign at the end of the summer. They had some transit ads, a bunch of online ads, and then all of this paperwork that I'm gonna pass around to you. And there's a youth-focused campaign with material specifically for youth that hopefully will be released in the spring. But yes, you're right, this really is like a matter of playing catch up here, because these products became so wildly popular and so many misconceptions about how dangerous they are. And so now we have a whole lot of education to do. So it's really, there are I think 6 other people who do my job who are funded through the Department of Public Health, who are all around the state, and really we're just trying to reach as many people as we can with this message and with these materials to basically dispel those myths that you're talking about. Yeah?
I'm from the Cape, and I heard a talk by 2 assistant principals from Nauset High School and on vaping, and it was really shocking, because they indicated that their perception is that we've got 75 to 80% of all the kids vaping. And one of my patients is from Mashpee. Her son is at the high school, Mashpee High School, and his perception was exactly the same thing, like 80%, which seems really incredibly high. Do you have any feeling among a number of high schools, how prevalent is it?
Right, so what you're saying about the perception being really high, like above 80%, I hear that across the board. High schools perceive that 80+% of their students are using these products. The data that we actually have, though, in Massachusetts, the newest data from 2017, is that about 20% of Massachusetts high schoolers are currently using these products, and about 40% have ever tried these products. Yeah.
Well, that's part of the problem, because as we know, if kids perceive
Exactly.
that their peers are using a product,
Yes.
then they'll think that there's like the peer pressure to use it, so.
And it normalizes it
Right.
when you have such a high perception.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Do you turn it on and off, and so that if you set a cigarette, one of these e-cigarettes down, and a child picked it up, could they just puff on it like they'd seen you do?
Yeah, some of them, to turn them on, you just inhale, and it turns, the battery will turn on. Some of them do have an on and off button, but some you just have to inhale to use. Yes.
I just want to make a note that I know kids who have never touched cigarettes in their life, have no interest, but started vaping because they liked the little canister, they thought it was cute, trendy, and now they're probably addicted.
They are, yes.
Yeah.
Right, so it takes about 3 weeks to start to develop a nicotine addiction. And flavors, the flavoring in these products is the #1 reason why youth use these products. The fact that all of these products are flavored is no accident. The tobacco industry knows that the young generation is very aware and educated on the dangers of traditional combustible cigarettes. This is a very intentional new way of targeting the next generation to be addicted to nicotine. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did.
Yep.
You did. Oh,
Yeah.
two questions.
Sure.
One, when you buy it at the store, don't you have to show an ID?
Yeah.
And what is it 18?
So right now, the state law in Massachusetts is that you need to be 18 to be sold tobacco products. The last day of this year, the state law is changing and raising the age to 21, but grandfathering in 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. Over 200 towns, I think we're at 208 towns now in Massachusetts, so over 85% of Massachusetts population. Those towns have just raised the age straight to 21. Plymouth is one of those towns. It eliminates a lot of confusion, and it eliminates those 18, 19, and 20-year-olds from still having access to these products.
That's for cigarettes and.
And vaping,
Yeah.
it's tobacco and nicotine products, yes.
And then the other question I had was, the original cigarette companies like Philip Morris,
Yep.
et cetera, are they,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
they make these products?
Yes,
Okay.
they own many of these brands. Juul, they don't own Juul. Juul's an independent brand, but Blue is a really big e-cigarette brand. Logic, like they own them. Yes.
Altria just bought a big stake in Juul.
Right. Yes. You're right.
Oh,
that is new.
Wow.
Yep. That did just happen
Big
like
stake.
last week. Yep. Yeah.
Are there any metrics yet on the damage that it does to the body, like cancer?
So because the products are so new, we don't have long-term studies. What we know about nicotine applies here because this is nicotine, so we know the mood disorders, we know, priming the brain for future addiction, disrupting the learning and attention. But as far as all of these chemicals go that are in here in addition to the nicotine, we don't have the long-term data yet. Yeah.
I'm really curious about the breakdown of race and socioeconomic status of people who do use these. It seems like a very kind of middle class sort of thing.
Yes, I'm very interested in that too. We don't, I don't have the data on that right now, but hopefully, we'll have that soon, because I think that's really important in looking at how we address this issue overall, really. And when you look at traditional cigarettes, menthol cigarettes were so heavily targeted toward Black people. Black Americans use menthol cigarettes at much higher rates than white Americans. And menthol is harder to quit. And when you look at cessation and people who have quit smoking, more people who use regular non-menthol cigarettes have quit recently. So when we look at the decrease in the smoking rate, it's not menthol users. And what does that mean? So that's a good
How many
point.
people are quitting cigarettes and switching to vape, thinking that it's safer?
So the thing about that is, when e-cigarettes came on the market, they were really, and they still, I just heard a radio ad for Juul, pitching it as a way to get off cigarettes. I hear a lot that adults are doing that, and the reality is what ends up happening is dual use. So someone will stop smoking cigarettes where it's either not socially acceptable to smoke cigarettes or not convenient, and use an e-cigarette instead, and perhaps end up consuming more nicotine at the end of the day. Yeah.
I also heard that you're putting pot, somehow they can.
You can.
Pot into the cassette.
Yeah, so anything that can be a liquid, you can vape. So THC oil, anything that can be a liquid. And there are vape devices that are specifically for dry marijuana as well, but just the regular vapes, anything that can be a liquid. Yeah.
So from a harm reduction model, is it better to smoke cigarettes or to vape?
So for an adult that smokes cigarettes already, vaping is thought to be less harmful. For someone who has never smoked a cigarette, picking up vaping and e-cigarettes is absolutely a bad idea and harmful. So yeah, I mean, vapes and e-cigarettes, maybe one step below cigarettes, but still nothing that we want 20% of high schoolers to be doing.
Yeah, I think there's a difference, I've said before, but I think there's a difference between someone who's been smoking 30, 40 years and like, hey, I want to quit smoking and start vaping because it's healthier, and a 15 or 16-year-old who say, oh, vaping's cool. I think there's two different audiences in terms of prevention, so.
And because these high schoolers, they all know that regular cigarettes are bad. If you talk to any high schooler, they know, and they'll say they'll never pick up a cigarette for the most part. They know it's bad. And with this misperception about e-cigarettes and vapes, they think that it's not harmful, and like I said, 3 weeks of use, and then they're developing this nicotine addiction.
So do you happen to know, I know tobacco usage among youth has gone way down over the last 20 years. Is it still really low, or?
Regular, traditional combustible cigarettes is under 7%. I think the 2017 data was 6.4%, I think.
So it's still low for cigarettes.
Very low for regular cigarettes. Around 11% for other tobacco products, so like little mini cigars, blunt wraps, chew and dip. And then the e-cigarettes, 20%.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are the high schools doing for the kids or parents for cessation? And what are they doing to, if they get caught and the paraphernalia is taken away?
Yeah.
Are they punishing?
So it varies quite a bit from high school to high school. In terms of what's out there for student education and student cessation, there are a couple of curriculum, free curriculum that school can put into place in health classes. One is called Catch My Breath, evidence-based curriculums. And then in terms of cessation, there is a website called Smoke Free Teen, which has a link or the information for the free helpline, which is 1-800-QUIT NOW, which anyone over 12 can use. They don't specifically have a youth protocol, but they are working on it. But anyone over 12 can call. And then there are apps and like text reminders to help a teenager who is trying to quit. And then the main thing that we tell people is work with the child's pediatrician. Yeah.
At this presentation out in Orleans, they indicated that a lot of the students were buying the e-cigarettes online.
Right.
Can you, what kind, even if you have to show ID if you buy them over the counter, what happens online? I haven't heard anything about that.
Up until very recently, it was really easy to go online and just check a box basically and say, yes, I am 18. It's become more difficult, and you really do have to prove it now. Recently I went onto Google's website to check and see what they actually asked for, and it was the last 4 of my social and my name and address, I think. So you did have to prove it in some way, but up until maybe like a month and a half ago, you could just really check a box online. And that is how kids were getting them. You can still buy these products like on Amazon, on eBay, and then another big way that kids get them, unfortunately, is and this is why raising the age to 21 is so important, is that 18-year-olds are in high school. And there are some 18-year-olds who are making quite a bit of money selling these products to their younger peers. Yeah.
Is there age restrictions on the products that are labeled no nicotine, nicotine free?
So the liquids, you mean, the e-liquids, so those are typically sold like in a vape shop, like the liquids like what I passed around, which you need to be 18 to get into if they're in there, but you know, I'm gonna have to look into that because I don't know if there was a no nicotine.
Yeah, if you went to like a Cumberland
product
Farms
Cumberland
and it said no
Farms.
nicotine, maybe you could
But it
buy it.
doesn't seem like they're.
I mean, that doesn't mean that, right, that
Right.
doesn't mean that
Right.
there's not nicotine in it, yeah.
See, that's the thing that I think the, promotion needs to be out on, is that it says no nicotine, but there could be slight traces of it. And if there are slight traces of it, you are getting it, and you can get, addicted to it.
Yeah.
So that's where the scary part is.
Right.
Is that people really think that it says nicotine free, and just getting the
Nicotine-free version, and at like these vape shops where, you know, you have a whole variety of different blends and flavors and whatever, a lot of them actually make those e-liquids themselves. They can if they want to, you know, there's not that regulation, so, I've heard from adults like, oh, I'm on the lowest dose, and, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. It could be the exact same as the highest dose, and you wouldn't know. Yeah.
I don't know if this is a silly question. How long does secondhand vape kind of linger in an environment?
So
Like, does it disappear more quickly than smoke would?
The smell does. So if I use like the Juul from right here, probably only you would smell it, and like maybe the people right over here, but for like just a second, it dissipates very quickly. Whereas if I smoked a cigarette from here, everyone in the room would smell it.
Right, but the harmful effects of it would kind of linger like secondhand smoke? Because I've seen commercial, people downstairs in an apartment building, the secondhand smoke can go up to the first floor.
Right.
And I know the vapor just kind of disappears more quickly, but.
Yeah, so I don't know specifically.
I'll give you a number just from a user standpoint. Take 16 inhalations to evacuate your lungs of the inhaled breathful of whatever it is you're smoking. So that's why when you're around smokers, you can just tell they've been out, even though they kind of, you know, they take a few breaths before they come into the room. 16 breaths to empty your lungs entirely. It's a dilutional thing. You can only get rid of so much, and it's just a regular re-dilution and aliquoting out of the. It's a long time, 16 breaths.
If
Very
you
well.
walk into the vape store, it is just filled. It's like you're walking into
Like a
a
cloud.
smoky room.
Yeah.
It's incredibly,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't know if the guy's just sitting there continually smoking, but it's, you open the door, it's like.
Yeah, and so that big, like the white cloud of vapor that you kind of like stereotypically think of with vaping, that's not necessary when vaping. So depending on the heat, some of the larger devices you can like basically make that cloud on purpose. But with the smaller devices like the Juul and the little devices that kids use in school, they don't make such a big cloud. And on the internet, of course, kids, there are plenty of videos teaching kids how to hold in the aerosol. I shouldn't call it a vapor. They hold in the aerosol for long enough that when they exhale, they're just exhaling like a little bit of the scent, and that's it, which makes it really easily concealed in school.
That's scary.
Yes.
So when someone smokes a marijuana cigarette, you can smell it, and it lingers.
Yeah.
A marijuana in an e-cigarette,
It doesn't. A THC oil in an e-cigarette does not smell like dry marijuana. Yeah, you wouldn't know. Yes.
You had made a comment earlier about dose, that you're not on a low dose. Do you have a sense of what the range is for dosing? In the packages that you pass around, you know, I saw like one was 1.5%, one was 5%. Do you have a sense of what that range is?
They can be all over the place, and one of them that I passed around said 70/30, and we don't know what that means. So it's it's a wide range.
Depends on how long you hold it in. Your long
Yeah, right.
So Marissa, how can someone get in touch with you in order to like maybe book you to come to a school?
Sure.
Or?
Yeah, I have cards.
Okay. Awesome.
And I can't speak to youth, unfortunately,
Oh.
but I can speak to parents and teachers, and I can connect anyone at a school with someone who can help implement the Catch My Breath curriculum, and she can speak to students and do that first lesson of the curriculum with them.
Oh, okay, awesome.
This has been great, thank you. I know it's gonna be brief, but we decided to bombard.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we
there's
usually
a lot
do.
of questions.
Any other questions?
So I've just wondered why this even kind of, like, the vaping stores and stuff, I don't know how towns are just allowing them and whatever, and even they're allowing to sell these and things,
Yeah.
what campaign can be done to outlaw it?
So, what towns can do, which is the most effective way to deal with this is on a town-by-town level, is they can pass as strong of regulations as they want. So what we really push for is, number one, raising the age to 21. Number two, restricting the sale of flavored tobacco and nicotine products to adult-only establishments. So that means Cumberland Farms and gas stations would not be allowed to sell any of this. Only in a store where you need to show an ID. Towns can cap the number of tobacco permits that they give. So, you know, pick a number and you don't have more than that. And towns can do whatever they want. They can ban tobacco outright if they want to. They can ban flavored products outright if they want to. But the real strong, comprehensive set of policies would be restricting to adult only. 21, which we're gonna have, the pharmacy ban, which we're gonna have.
But how can we totally just get rid of it? I mean, I don't see the.
You can,
Well, yeah, but this is such a new, I don't,
you can talk to your board of, what town do you live in?
I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Well, we talked to our politicians, and get rid of the lobbyists that are paying all the money.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so
Where
like
did
when,
it originate?
what's that?
Where did it originate from?
The flavored products?
Yeah.
The tobacco industry. So flavored cigarettes are banned. Flavored cigarettes, you can't sell them. It's just menthol for the flavors.
Wow.
So in basically a new effort to get flavored products out there, the tobacco industry started with the vaping.
They wanted to build a new market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's replacement.
Right.
Replacement customers.
Because they're losing their sales.
Their business.
Right, it was smart.
Yeah.
And they're using the same marketing
The
techniques
same-
as they did. Right.
Yeah.
The exact
Yeah.
same. Yes. Exactly.
And I think the state, even the FDA are catching up with the vaping. You know what I mean? It was kind of late to the game because the industry was out there and there were no regulations for the longest time. But now, slowly but surely, you're seeing more attention and more actual regulation laws being
Yeah,
passed.
so the attention is great
Right.
because it gets people talking about
Right.
it. But I mean, what really is most important and most effective is those local strategies
Right.
because you know, towns do have a lot of power to regulate
Right.
this. Yes.
What kinds of international efforts are going on? Because this is an international problem. What do you see in terms of other countries?
I'm not sure about other countries. Sorry, I'd have to look into that.
What area do you cover, Marissa?
So I have 60 cities and towns,
Wow.
from Foxborough, Attleboro, Mansfield, all the way to Plymouth, and then all of the Cape and
Okay.
everything south.
So you could be very busy.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I am very busy.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of prevention campaigns, one of the things that I think helped with cigarettes was sort of the gross factor, like what it did to your teeth, how it smelled.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that you're gonna have a harder time, apparently it doesn't smell. Or
It smells good. Do you smell any of the stuff?
But does it have like some of the effects like making your teeth yellow, aging?
Yeah, so the FDA has an information campaign. I think it's called either the true cost or the real cost, and it kind of does have that like gross factor to it. You can look at their website, and like I said, the Department of Public Health is working on a youth campaign, which hopefully will be out, I think, the beginning of April, to kind of explain, you know, what the effects of these are, and in kind of like that similar way that we did with cigarettes. Yes?
Is there any kind of substance that helps break the nicotine addiction? I mean, is there some, or is it just willpower?
So there right now are not any nicotine replacement therapies for youth. So it's you know, whatever the pediatrician recommends. Unfortunately, it's kind of
how well versed are pediatricians in this issue?
What's that?
How well versed how do you find pediatricians to be in this issue, given that it's so new?
Yeah, I've heard anything from they're really great to they said it's not that bad. So
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
just took my 12-year-old for his physical, and she asked. So some of them do.
Yeah.
She asked him. She said, you know, have you heard about vaping? And so she did ask. So that's
good.
Encouraged.
Yes.
Some of them are.
Maybe time for one more question?
I just have a question for you, and that's, so I read a report that said the FDA in this counterpoint on tobacco versus vapes, that if you were gonna choose, they would prefer people not use cigarettes, and short of the word encouraging, said that e-cigarettes were preferred. Well, that might not have been the correct word. So the gross factor comes with a mixed message from the FDA, as I heard it, that we'd rather you didn't use cigarettes. Let's put it that way. Was
Right.
that a correct statement?
Well, I mean, we'd rather people use nothing, of course. But if we're looking at adults who use regular combustible cigarettes, yeah, they have said that the e-cigarette is perhaps safer, but not for someone who does not and has not used tobacco or nicotine products.
Which one's more expensive?
You know, it kind of depends how much you use, number one, and then which specific vaping products you use, but
Well, that's another way that cigarettes have been, anti-tobacco program. The taxes are so high.
Can we tax?
Yeah.
Can the towns put a tax on vaping?
The state certainly can.
Do you not tax cigarettes?
I'm not sure. Are they
no,
tax?
no, they're not. And I don't know if a town specifically can, but that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like cigarettes.
Call your your state representative.